1947, Jackie Robinson engineered the integration of professional sports in America by breaking the color barrier in baseball. His major league debut brought 60 years of segregation in professional baseball to an end. Jackie overcame numerous obstacles in his 10-year career to become one of baseball's most exciting players. His enormous talent helped the Brooklyn Dodgers to 6 pennants and 1 World Series championship. Upon retirement from baseball, Jackie fought tirelessly to improve the quality of life for African Americans and society as a whole. Robinson's efforts were a monumental step in the civil rights movement and the unity of all races in America.
Jackie Robinson hit that ball. It went zooming across the left field wall.
Jack Roosevelt Robinson was born into a family of sharecroppers on January 31, 1919 in Cairo, Georgia. He was named for the President Theodore Roosevelt, who died 25 days before he was born. Around this time, World War I had just ended, creating bitter post-war competition for jobs and housing between whites and blacks. This resulted in the Red Summer of 1919. That summer, race riots erupted in many cities across the country, and 76 African Americans were lynched. Jackie's father abandoned the family in 1920, leaving Jackie's mother, Mallie, to raise him and his 4 older siblings. That year, she moved the family cross-country from Georgia to Pasadena, California, a wealthy suburb of Los Angeles, joining the massive wave of African Americans migrating from the Jim Crow South to northern and western cities. During Jackie's youth, black people represented a small percentage of the community and were treated as second-class citizens. Black people were only allowed in the local YMCA for 1 day a week, and were only allowed to swim in the community pool on Wednesdays, the day it was drained. Even though Jackie had very limited athletic opportunity, he was motivated by his older brothers to try sports. His older brother Mac was an outstanding athlete who won a silver medal in track at the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. Jackie graduated from high school in 1938 and continued his education at UCLA, where he was the first student athlete to letter in 4 different sports: football, basketball, track, and baseball. Jackie was forced to leave UCLA in 1941 due to financial hardship. When World War II started, Jackie was drafted and assigned to a segregated cavalry unit in Fort Riley, Kansas. He served for 2 years and rose to the rank of second lieutenant, although he never saw combat. Jackie had a brief stint as a college basketball coach before signing with the Kansas City Monarchs of the Segregated Negro Baseball League in 1945. Segregation had been a part of baseball since its conception. In the second half of the 19th century after the Civil War, the sport saw a massive boom of popularity in the U.S., which led to the formation of more amateur clubs. However, as the sport continued to develop, there were more attempts to exclude African Americans from the highest-ranking teams. In 1867, the National Association of Amateur Baseball Players voted to reject applications from black players and clubs. When the Professional National League was founded in 1876, its founders decided on a gentleman's agreement to keep black players out of the league. Black people still played in other levels of professional baseball. Moses Fleetwood Walker of the Toledo Blue Stockings became the first African American to play in a major league in 1884. Walker and the other few black players in the league at the time faced intense discrimination and backlash. 19th century baseball star Cap Anson was known for his fervent anti-integration beliefs, and on a few occasions he threatened to sit out games instead of play opposite a black man on the field. Cap's push for segregation led the other major league at the time, the International League, to bar African American players from signing new contracts in 1887. There would be no black players in professional baseball for 6 decades. Clubs exclusively for black people were started in the early 1900s, and the official Negro League was established in 1920. The players in the Negro Leagues had inferior practice facilities and equipment, and black players made 3 or 4 times less than the average white player. By World War II, the push for black equality and the integration of professional baseball was slowly gaining steam. The manager of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey, had already been scouting for new black players to join his team. In October 1945, Rickey announced a new addition to his team that would shock the country. As a young man, Jackie Robinson was very political and often displayed impatience towards authority figures he perceived as racist, a character trait that would resurface throughout his life. In 1938, he was arrested for vocally disputing the arrest of one of his friends by the police. While in the Army in 1944, Jackie was arrested and court-martialed for refusing to give up his seat and move to the back of a segregated bus. These events gave him a reputation of combativeness when facing discrimination. Before signing Jackie, Dodgers coach Branch Rickey needed to make sure that he could resist the inevitable racial abuse that would be directed at him. In a famous 3-hour exchange on August 28, 1945, Rickey asked Jackie if he could face the abuse without taking the bait and reacting angrily. Jackie was at first upset. He said, "Are you looking for a Negro who is afraid to fight back?" Rickey replied and said he needed a Negro player with guts enough not to fight back. Jackie started off playing AAA ball for the Montreal Royals for a year before being called up to the starting team 6 days before the 1947 season. On April 15, 1947, Jackie Robinson broke baseball's color barrier by becoming the first African American to play in the major leagues. He did so at the age of 28 in front of a crowd of 26,000 people, half of whom were black. Even though he didn't manage a base hit, he walked and scored a run, helping the Dodgers win 5-3. Jackie's will was tested during his entire career with the Brooklyn Dodgers. Some of his teammates objected to playing with a black man. Fans in the crowd would boo and jeer at Jackie. He and his family received many hateful threats. The Philadelphia Phillies and their manager Ben Chapman shouted derogatory slurs at Jackie from the dugout during one infamous game. Despite the heckling, Jackie won the Rookie Player of the Year award in 1947 and won the Most Valuable Player award in 1949. A tremendous base hitter, Jackie led the Dodgers to 6 pennants and the World Series title in 1955. Following his retirement from baseball, Jackie continued to be an exemplary person. He served on the board of directors for the NAACP from 1957 to 1967 and became the first black vice president of a major corporation. He encouraged black people to protest their status as second-class citizens and go out and vote. Jackie was deeply saddened by the death of his firstborn son, Jackie Jr., from an automobile crash in 1971 at age 24. Sadly, Jackie did not live his son for long. Complications from heart disease and diabetes had made him nearly blind by middle age. Jackie Robinson died from a heart attack at his home on October 24, 1972. He was 53 years old. The black players who followed Jackie Robinson shattered the stereotype that African Americans were not qualified to play at the major league level. Between 1949 and 1960, black players won 8 out of 12 Rookie of the Year awards and 9 out of 12 Most Valuable Player awards in the National League, which was more integrated than the American League. Jackie pushed baseball to hire more black people as managers and executives. At his final public appearance, throwing the ceremonial first pitch before Game 2 of the 1972 World Series, he observed, "I'm going to be tremendously more pleased and more proud when I look at the third base coaching line one day and see a black face managing in baseball." Jackie was an active participant in the struggle for civil rights, working with Martin Luther King Jr., who said he was a legend and a symbol in his own time, and that he challenged the dark skies of intolerance and frustration. As of 2018, players of color represented 42.5% of major league rosters. Black athletes represented only 7.7% of major league players, a dramatic decline from the peak of 27% in 1975 and less than half the 19% in 1995. The shrinking proportion is due primarily to the growing numbers of Latino, Asian, and foreign-born athletes now populating major league rosters. Jackie would be extremely heartened by the recent upsurge of activism amongst professional athletes and the nationwide protests for racial equality. Robinson's efforts and bravery were a critical step in the civil rights movement and the integration of professional sports.